this country this afternoon, Honorable Tolit Simon Akecha. I want to send my deepest condolences to the family and most importantly to the people of Omoro. As you know, Honorable Tolit has been fighting for good governance all his life, and it's unfortunate that he has passed on without seeing those ideals that he has been fighting for. Regarding the state of affairs in the National Unity Platform, of course, I can say that the challenges that we are fighting against are still there, but we continue to struggle. On Saturday, we marked 2 years since we saw a grand theft of an election by General Museveni and his regime. And of course, the people of Uganda must continue clamoring for change to ensure that we have a country where the rule of law is respected. We still have many people who are incarcerated illegally. We still have people who are missing up to now. And we continue to use all avenues, legal and other strategies to demand for their freedom, for the freedom of these people. You've seen us visit them some in their homes, others in prisons and other places. So what I can say is that the National Unity Platform is on course, and the objectives for which we set out are still clear, and we're still following them.
All right. Let's begin with the issue of the elections. 2 years later, you say on Saturday you marked 2 years since the grand theft of elections. Now, one would say that is not true. There was an election, the Electoral Commission presided over it. You went and registered your candidate there. The votes were cast. The winner was announced, and it was President Yoweri Museveni. That's not being enough. You went to court and failed to prove your case there, and even withdrew the case, the petition.
Well, I think any person who makes those claims is either not very honest or not serious, because every Ugandan knows what happened on the 14th of January. You know, even before, you saw what kind of nominations we had, where our candidate was abducted and beaten up in broad daylight and placed under house arrest. And you remember all the kinds of campaigns we had. You remember the switching off of the internet across the country. You remember the videos which emerged of ballot stuffing all across the country. You remember, you know, the military taking over the election in many parts of the country and doing all sorts of things. I think it was one of the worst elections in history. And you say that we went to court and withdrew the case. You remember the circumstances under which we did that. And if I must remind you, just see what Justice Chisache said in her affidavit when she decided to sue Mr. Owinidolo, the so-called Chief Justice of this country. And you know that Owinidolo denied us a chance to bring in more evidence, went ahead to, you know, deny us an opportunity to amend our petition together with the other, you know, several other members of the bench. So it was clear that, and it remains clear even up to now, that the institutions, be it the Electoral Commission, the judiciary and others, are under capture by General Museveni and his people, and they're not ready or willing to hand over power peacefully or legally to the people of Uganda. And that is why the international community came out clearly and strongly and said the election was neither free nor fair. To remind you, the US issued a statement, the European Union issued a statement, it made even a resolution in the European Parliament. So everyone could see that there was no election, there was just a sham exercise. But someone may say, then why do you participate in these exercises? Why have you continued to participate in them? Like we say...
Not only that, there are other places where your leaders won and they were declared by the Electoral Commission.
What we have in Uganda, you know, these kleptocrats, that's how they operate. They decide which areas, for example, they don't want to do a lot of chaos, and other places where they will have a field day. Because they look at the consequences. You know, for example, in Uganda, the levels of awareness, civic participation and consciousness are higher than in Western Uganda, for example, and in the Far East, in Northern Uganda and other places. So what do you expect? And that's what the regimes do everywhere. They go to these rural places, intimidate the people, place them under the barrel of the gun, and have their field day rigging and doing all manner of things. You remember when Chigundu, who was then the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, was asked, Badru Chigundu, was asked why, they always have results of, Kapere Byong, Kabera Maido, in those places, Karamoja and Far East and other places, even when you would expect the results from here in Uganda, for example, to be announced first. But the reason why they do that is because in those rural areas they're able to rig and to announce whatever they want, and they come. 77 has gotten 90% of the vote in Kabong. You know, because that's far away, and the people there, they are able to intimidate them so much, and there's not so much scrutiny in terms of the media and other, you know, paraphernalia and you know, whether TV, radio station, etc., etc. So that's why the regime focuses the rigging machine in the rural areas.
And one would also say that probably the reason you never win in the rural areas, you have no presence there. We saw a number of places where political parties did have agents, and the same applied to NUP.
Well, that's not true. Actually, what we did, and to our credit, really, even having
you had no structure.
No, I'm coming to that. I'll say to our credit, even when we went into that election, only 2 months after unveiling a party, we deployed agents, not only the local agents, but we even deployed people from Kampala to the farthest places in this country. We would get people from Karamoja and send them to Western Uganda, get some people from Western and send them to other places. But what happened? They were abducted. You know, many of them were just imprisoned up to when the election. You just find out, you see what happened in Chiruhura, in Isinjiro and other places. And you know, if Windola had allowed our evidence, you'd see this, because up to now we have all these affidavits, people who were chased from polling stations, who were denied access to polling stations, and there are videos where Honorable Robert Chagulanyi's agents were being dragged from polling stations by the military and all these security agencies. So that argument by the regime is not true at all. They keep saying it for obvious reasons. But if, for example, we have deployed supervisors in Ankole, and then you come and pick this supervisor, you remember the media was awash with our diaspora leader, Haman, who was arrested from Lango. And, you know, they first arrested the first supervisor we sent, immediately abducted Comrade Cole Haman, and arrested him and detained him up to when the election had ended. So that is how the regime operates. Then they say, you know, they were participating in subversive activities. They say they were recruiting rebels and that kind of thing. So that is the environment under which we operate as political parties. And then you talk about structures. You know, you've seen us try to do activities. You remember the other day, our comrades from Kasese were detained, arrested because they were found in a meeting of NUP trying to, you know, organize and set up structures, and the RDC ordered for their arrest. They charged them with terrorist activities, and recently the court threw out that case because there was no evidence whatsoever. But these young men spent 6 months in jail, you know, and that happened all across when we are trying to establish mobilization teams and all these other things. So I think you need to really be honest as a Ugandan to say that we live under a complete military dictatorship, but we're trying to struggle. We try to invent new means every day. We don't want to just come here and lament. There are other strategies that we must employ as citizens of this country to be able to overwhelm the regime and change leadership.
Now, let's reflect on this election 2 years later.
Yeah.
As a Secretary General, you are in charge of guiding the political party, especially on strategy, day-to-day administration, and planning generally for the political party. What are the lessons that you learned in these elections that, given a chance, you do things differently? Have you been able to do a SWOT analysis to be able to understand and say, here, we did wrong, we could have done better? We have an election in 2026. God willing.
Well, first of all, our focus is not on the 2026 election. If our strategy is really to continue struggling, because we believe that Genome 7 and we can even fall tomorrow, can fall today, can fall any other day. And that is what preoccupies our minds, to try and see how do we struggle to get this change that we so much desire. Because elections in this country have been reduced into a complete joke. And like I said, when we go into these elections now, our strategy is always different. It's not that we are participating only to be declared and all that. Our strategy and really the biggest intention in our participation in these elections is to awaken the people and to send a message to far out places in all these areas. Because, you know, an election season is emotive. People are able to come out and express which side they belong to, etc., etc. But, you know, if I was a Secretary General in a democratic country, I would tell you, I would respond to your question directly to say, maybe we need to deploy more polling agents, maybe we need to do a lot more training of people. But what do you do in a country where you saw what was happening in these by-elections? In Omoro, for example, where we have lost our good leader, you know that 62 out of 84 polling stations had our polling agents arrested just recently. They came, picked our polling agents, and you know, we had their bond forms, bail forms, those went to court, but most of them were released on police bond after the election had been rigged with impunity. So, you know, I think it becomes very difficult in that context to say what I do, because the regime does not view elections in that way. We went to Songora, to Kasese, and you saw what they did. They deployed the military, took over all polling stations, and did, you know, heinous crimes against democracy, I must say.
Well, that's really your agency no more, because the official position that we got from the police that very day, the people who were arrested were actually saboteurs, people who had moved.
Enjoy a cashless, convenient and secure way of saving with the KCB.
From different parts of the country to go and disorganize the election in Omoro. That's the official position which was given. Because even the Electoral Commission did say you didn't even present a complaint at the complaint desk which was there. But so it was concluded that indeed there were bad elements who had come to confuse the elections who were arrested.
But what do you expect? What do you expect the Electoral Commission to say? Or what do you expect Biabakama and his people to say about these things? How do you expect, you know, it's really unfortunate that yet they are the ones who have been committing these crimes against democracy. Because you see, the DPC of Omoro was busy saying that, you know, people should not come from other districts and participate in an election. Yet, you saw all other DCs were in Omoro to come and campaign for NRM and even steal votes for NRM. The NRM did not stop there. They deployed DSOs, they deployed all manner of whatever, then their secretariat, they sent in people. So what were they doing there? So when they deploy other DCs to do work for Museveni and NRM, that is okay. But when we send in some of our comrades from Kampala, for example, to come and participate in the protection of the vote, they say those have come to disorganize the elections. So these people are being picked from polling stations, and they were, you know, properly identified. They even had letters signed by our candidates, etc., etc. So, you know, I want to debunk that idea that people are going in to disorganize elections.
So, based on your submission, you seem to suggest ahead of 2026, you have no strategy, you have no plan. Other political parties are talking about revamping their structures. The other day we saw the FDC saying they'll be moving across the country to sort of open up offices and things like that. For you, you are waiting for that election period. First of all, you say you're counting on President Yoweri Museveni and his government to fall anytime, and probably
not counting on. We are working hard to see that.
You're working hard. So
yeah, but secondly, we are going on with our work.
Until then, what
and that's what
is the political party doing?
The political party has been doing work. You've been seeing us, for example, establish mobilization committees all across the country. This year, we are going to start building party structures. And those party structures are not tagged to the 2026 election or otherwise. Those party structures are meant to reignite the revolution, to continue doing work. We are doing other things. You know, you've seen the work we're doing in institutions. You've seen the work we're doing in mobilization. Like I said, this year we're going to do a lot of organization work, building our structures and doing other things. You've seen the work we're doing in communication. These past 2 years, we've been heavily involved in welfare, because, you know, you have all these thousands of people who have been illegally arrested. Some have been badly tortured. Some need to go abroad for treatment. Others need to get treatment here. Others are in prisons, and we have to, you know, look after them. And, you know, so many other things that we've been involved in under the welfare effort, and we continue to do that. The other day you saw me at the home of one of the people who has been missing, and we'll continue. We are continuing to visit them. The time is coming. We need to think about these families whose breadwinners were taken away. But most importantly, to continue the struggle for freedom and democracy. And this is not going to be done by Honorable Chagulanyi alone, or David Lucy Rubongoya, or Honorable Senyonyi, or Kawamadigo somewhere. This is going to be done by the citizens of Uganda. The citizens of Uganda, the professionals who are listening to me now as they drive back home, they need to realize that our country, you've been seeing the NSSF haste, money haste that's going on. You see the national debt and where it is going right now. You're seeing the corruption in every sector, 10 trillion that we lose every year in corruption. You're seeing the road carnage caused by poor infrastructure, poor regulations, and many other factors. You're seeing our people dying of hunger in Karamoja, in Far East and other places. You're seeing the level of insecurity and crime in the country because of these challenges. Last year, you saw us involved in repatriating these young, mainly young girls from Dubai and other Arab countries who go there because they don't have jobs, and NUP took the effort of returning these people. So all these...
We were told it is the government that returned them, and for you, you would go and wait for them at the airport and then claim that it is NUP that has brought them back.
But why do you listen to this regime?
But anyway, let's look at the other issue.
Yeah.
You say you work tirelessly every day to see the fall of President Yoweri Museveni. And some people, especially who listen to this radio station, I'll say the elite, the educated, will ask a question. So, when Museveni falls, what next? What do you stand for? Some people have suggested you have no ideology, you have no plan. At one time, there was even things which were moving on social media where they were telling you do not understand the economy. You have no plan whatsoever.
I don't know why you listen to the regime and agree with it, and also listen to the propagandists.
This has not only been said by the government officials.
I'm coming to that because you know, the same way you listen to these regime officials and seem to believe them, I wouldn't want you to also listen to those propagandists who
it's
say
the
that.
same way we are listening to now.
We have a manifesto. I don't know if you've bothered to read it. Our manifesto is very, very clear on what we stand for. I'm a lawyer myself, and you wouldn't expect me not to know something about what we stand for: good governance, rule of law, etc., etc. The regime always tries to portray its opponents as weak, as ineffective, and whatever. But I can tell you that our manifesto is very clear on what has gone wrong in this country and how it should be, you know, how it should be checked, or how we should change what has gone wrong with our country. Ranging from the economy, we clearly say that, for example, the priorities, look at the budget that is being
let's use the current
now.
Circumstances in the economy as an example.
And that's what I'm coming to.
What would you do?
The biggest problem with our country is priorities, wrong priorities. If you get the kind of money they are investing or injecting into defense and security in trillions, when the country is not at war, and the trillions they put under classified expenditure, which me and you know goes into patronage mostly, buying drones, buying tear gas and all these things. If you got that money and invested it where it matters most, especially in healthcare, in education, in revamping agriculture in this country, in industrialization and skilling young people to ensure that they have the skills, especially those who have not gone far in education. We are running a digital world right now. We must invest in technology. We must invest in educating young people to have skills and to, you know, be technologically up to speed with what is going on in the world. So it is a fallacy for anyone to say that NUP does not know what to do. We know how General Museveni and his regime has destroyed this country, and we know what we can do. Just get the 10 million shillings, I mean the 10 trillion shillings, which we lose in corruption, and inject it in the right sectors. And then you will see actually how our country can grow very, very fast. And, you know, why should we be borrowing all these monies that we borrow when our country is a node? And, you know, so the corruption and all these other challenges that have come as a result of longevity in power. Because you see, when the leader chooses to stay longer in power, every other dictator is in power, that affects, that breeds corruption, for example. Because you see, once the president or the dictator wants to be in power, then the people who feed off that system are more inclined to be corrupt, and the dictator loses more power and even the moral authority, because now they say state corruption in this country begins from state house. So these are the things that we need to, and there are many other sectors I can talk about if we have time.
There have been reports by the IGG, but I've not seen where they have concluded that corruption begins from state house. Why would you say so?
But it's a fact. Are you saying that you don't know what happens during elections?
Well, I don't know.
The former IGG, her leadership, Irene Muriagonja, made it clear. She was saying that the problem, you people say that I'm always going after the small fish, but when I try to catch the big fish, I find them hiding behind the back of the president. And so that is clear to everybody in this country. You saw during the election, all these artists were going to State House and other places to pick money because they were meant to fight the Honorable Chagulanyi. Now imagine an artist goes, Butcherman or whoever, just name them, and is given 200 million shillings simply because of patronage, the corruption I'm talking about. And imagine what that money would do if you actually invested it in what you call human capital development, in healthcare, in revamping the hospitals, in revamping,
For couples who don't suspect that there is an issue with them.
So you see the amount of money we spend every year sending government officials abroad for treatment. And imagine if we're able to invest our own money in hospitals, in health centers, and other things like making sure that water is accessible to the people, to the lowest person. So there are many things I would talk about, and but it is very clear where corruption begins from. Remember when we got immediately after out of the election, there are many things that those people have speculated, and if you notice, they have not happened. That is not to say that there are no challenges. Every home, every organization, every family, every entity has challenges. And NUP cannot be an exception. There are challenges, but the most important thing lies in how we handle them, and we continue every single day to try to handle our issues. Every time some of our leaders have not focused enough on what the cause should be. We have had meetings with them, we've had engagements where we encourage each other. Really, it's not about ordering these people around, but encouraging each other to always remember why millions of people came out on 14th of January in 2021 and voted, and braved the rain, braved the sun in other places to cast that vote. And so it's our duty as leaders to continue reminding ourselves, to continue reminding each other about the huge responsibility which the citizens of this country bestow on us. But I'll say also that you may have just a few bad apples, quote unquote, in a basket, but that does not mean that a big section of leaders are not focused. No, I would say without fear of contradiction that majority of our leaders are still focused on those values for which we stand. They have been exposing the corrupt. They've been fighting local government leaders, trying to unearth what has been going on in their places. Many of them are engaged in service delivery towards our people and many other things. But like I said, when you get out of an election, which we like to call a military operation, as it was in 2021, you really wouldn't expect those challenges not to be there. People were fatigued, others, were traumatized, etc. And slowly but surely, we are trying to get back that pace to see that our people can get freedom. But most importantly, to encourage them, because this will not even just come from the leaders, but from the people themselves.
Let me give you a typical example, and there's a listener who has actually sent in a message here. Yeah. Henry, he says, national unity in the bracket, he says, marrying party, for which I'm a supporter, has let us down for 2 years now. your ideology isn't known, we need electoral forms. I've been saying people on social media, each time one of your political party works, there is concern around there. I'm sure you've also been seeing the comments. They actually tell you, how does this help the struggle? Have you seen those comments?
I have, of course.
What does this tell you?
One of the things I want to say is that I think majority of that narrative is from the regime. It is sponsored by the regime, clearly. But that does not say that does not mean that we don't need to do introspection. And that's why I say that that's why we're leaders. We are there to listen to the people, but also to even listen to our detractors. So most of that comes from the regime. They keep saying you're marrying, but I want to ask you a question, for example.
Doesn't that contradict the notion that you take outside this country? Because there are some places when you leave this country, you go and tell them in Uganda the situation is really bad, but then there are all these pictures of beautiful weddings.
Are you saying that
people
people
going to the beach?
Kenneth,
you know,
are you saying that there
music
are no
everywhere
abduction in this country?
I'm not the one saying.
Are you saying no? I'm asking because the reason why we say Uganda is bleeding.
The picture you present abroad.
Yeah, I'm answering
the picture reflected back home.
One
seem to be in contradiction.
Because we put both pictures there. When I say Uganda is bleeding, what do I mean? They are abductions. I want to challenge you now to go with your fellow journalists to try and do a protest about anything here at City Square or any place in this country and see how the regime will treat you. I want to challenge you to fully express yourself on this radio station in a way that you would actually want to do in a democratic country and see if this radio station is not raided and probably closed. So when we say Uganda is bleeding, we are talking about the abductions, the killings. You know, you saw what happened on the 18th, 17th, 18th, and 19th of November 2020. You know, where hundreds of citizens of this country, probably in hundreds, the regime said 54, but our estimates show that many more people were killed by the regime. Certainly over 100 people were killed. So that is what we mean when we say Uganda is bleeding. But like I was saying, the key question, the most critical question, and that's what we keep saying amongst ourselves, a wedding is a natural phenomenon. For example, you imagine if we said that all the people who have been struggling against Museveni should not marry, should not wed. You know, Dr. West started struggling against Museveni 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. Are you saying that all FDC supporters and leaders should not have married since then, up to now? We are a party of predominantly young people. And these young people, you know, every once in a while when they have an opportunity, they decide to marry and that kind of thing. That does not really, in my view, and it's ridiculous. I mean, we've given examples of General Museveni. They were involved in a military campaign, but he went on to wed and have children. And all these other people that were involved in even armed struggles, look at Mandela and others. That, you know, the fact that you're involved in a struggle against a dictatorship does not mean that you'll not go on and start a family and you know, people will start saying, oh, you shouldn't eat because you're in the struggle, you should. But like I said, those are narratives driven by the regime.
All right.
To our supporters, the question should be, if we are spending 5% of our time on weddings, say 5%, then the 95% of the time should be spent on those things which further the struggle for freedom and democracy. That should be the most important thing. And that has been our message to the leaders, that yes, it's important you go and marry, do what, but after that, go back to work. Get back to work and continue struggling and do small or big acts that you can do to continue fighting for freedom.
Right. Let's look at the issues of accountability. You demand for accountability from the NRM government, but you have also seen where your supporters are demanding for accountability. Yeah. Apparently, you, as a political party, have received a lot of funds from abroad, and also there are reports you also received funds under the iPod arrangement, and they are demanding for accountability. What are you doing with this?
I don't know who those people you talk about are. Like I said, for me, the challenge is that I see you repeat the narratives I see from the regime, certainly not from our supporters.
Well, I'm telling you what is out there in the public domain.
That's what I'm saying, that, you know, you need to... Anyway, to answer your question, one, we are a registered political party as NUP. We are obligated by law to account every financial year to the Electoral Commission. You can go and ask the Electoral Commission if we did not account for funds received by law. And that's a commitment I can give you, that we account. We've not, of course, this year and last year mostly, we've not received money, a lot of money from the diaspora, like you're trying to put it. The diaspora largely contributed during our campaigns, and after that, we largely put a halt on diaspora fundraising, and maybe we'll do that again when we have massive activities or a bigger cause for that. You see, for example, when we have the repatriation effort, we do a fundraiser, and it's clear, you know, we brought 203 people from abroad who we bought air tickets for, and you can do the calculation and see how much money we spent on returning these people. But we account, and accountability is not just in papers, because, you know, like the Museveni regime, people go and forge things, and then Kosase and the IGG come in and all that. For us, we are action-based. You've seen, for example, in just the space, the time that we've spent here, we have a permanent home. We've bought land, a huge chunk of land, and structures where we're going to have our offices. Like I said, we've spent a lot of money on welfare. And that's what I'm asking, which supporters are talking about, because our real supporters know what we do. They know the pain that our people are going through. Some have been assisted here and there, with, especially those who were abducted. You've seen almost every abducted person, we send them for psychosocial support. They go to hospitals for treatment. You've seen us assist some of them from not even within the country. So on the question of accountability, I think NUP has done it, just not in writing, because that's a legal requirement which we will fulfill, but most importantly, in practice, in what we do.
Did you finally receive the funds from iPod?
We are not members of iPod, and we don't receive any fund from iPod. It's a great, crazy contradiction for anyone to say that you're not a member of iPod. You know, we clearly said we are not members of iPod. And as a result of our actions, iPod even closed shop here in this country. You know that they've been retreating because we said we cannot participate in dialogue when there's no democracy, when there's no respect for the rule of law, etc. So we are not members of iPod, and we cannot certainly receive money from iPod.
All right, let's move on and look at your relationship with other political parties. And I'll draw very quickly on the issue of 2026. You know, each time we are going for election, there is talk about a national front where forces of change, forces of change, some people suggest you should be talking to each other and probably thinking of a way of working together, where possible, have even a joint presidential candidate. We are told before the late Dr. Paul Kawanga Semogere passed on, there was a discussion going on. What is the position of NUP on this issue of cooperating with other forces of change?
We are the National Unity Platform. You know, to remind you, there are many political parties which would have wanted the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi to take them over and stand under them. But we chose NUP because of our belief ideologically in the question of national unity. We believe in national unity as the first and most important thing. So for us to believe that in order to redeem Uganda, you need to unite with all democratic forces, with all change-seeking forces, and that is what we believe in. The greatest problem in this country is that, you know, when you see someone say I'm opposition, you think they are opposition. Or when someone comes and says, oh, look, I'm for the forces of change, then you think, you imagine, for example, in the last election, we were involved in discussions with some of our colleagues from other parties. And we sat in countless meetings trying to resolve this puzzle called, you know, opposition unity. But which people were we engaging with? Norbert Mao, who is now in Museveni's cabinet as a minister. Or which Tiwa Joyce Sebugwa, who was at the time the vice chairperson of FDC, the vice president. So you can imagine that sometimes you people in the media and other analysts just assume wrongly that because people say they are opposition, then they are opposition. And that is the biggest challenge. Dictators like Museveni thrive on dividing the people. You see what they've done to, you know, with the Muslim community factions, and that's how General Museveni is able to control them.
Well, we have no evidence that it's the government that is responsible for the sharp.
No, what I am saying is that dictatorships everywhere. If you say dictatorship, one of the things you'll see there divisions within any group that would otherwise mount a serious challenge, whether in the academia, civil society organizations, political parties, religious institutions. Everywhere you go, you'll find divisions. And certainly for political parties, I can say that without fear of contradiction, that the regime has always sponsored divisions in political parties, because they know what unity would be. And I've given clear examples. For a long time, people were saying Honorable Norbert Mao was working with the regime. And many of us were saying, no, maybe, we said, let's give him a chance. But later on, you realize, oh, all along, that is why someone can sit in a meeting. You sit in a meeting today, they bring an excuse and for not uniting. Then 2 months later, another excuse. The following month, another excuse. So what we are trying to do now is not to give up, but to create what we call a coalition of the willing.
Well, Mr. Lubongoya, you talk about people working with this regime. There are some pictures that I have seen sometime back on social media. They said Robert Chagulanyi was a personal friend to the first time General Muhoozi and Rugaba. So each person has a past,
different.
And each person has a past, and probably that past can also influence where they are going.
No, one, you know, for us, personally, for example, I believe in sincerity. When I supported the NRM, I did it out of sincerity at the time when I did. And there were reasons, clear reasons, which I've expressed that made me quit the NRM and join the change-seeking forces. You know, people talk about unity. For us, I have no problem uniting with any of the change-seeking forces. The problem is that the NRM is essentially a criminal organization, that they don't believe in democracy, they don't believe in the rule of law.
You're not uniting with the NRM. In this case, you should
what I'm saying, what I'm
FEC.
talking about, what I'm answering is where you say that some people can go and work with NRM and still remain on these values. I am saying that once you cross the Rubicon and start working with those people who are abducting people, who are not allowing political parties to function properly, who are out there to destroy whatever is left of democracy, then that's you cannot say that you are uniting those people in an honest manner.
Well, you accuse the NRM of that, but some people have also said you people in the opposition are disorganized, you are selfish.
Who are those people?
They are leaders who didn't want to leave space for others. There are those who are disorganized when it comes to issues of unity. You do not have a platform where you can freely engage and come up with an idea that you can sell to the general public. So,
but I've just told you that we are creating a coalition
rather than focus on the NRM. What are you doing?
You see, I was trying to answer one of your questions, but let me, and I think I've already answered this question. I've told you that a lot of divisions that you see on the surface are usually sponsored by the regime. Because the regime that we have believes in patronage, believes in dividing, you know, the forces of change. You can see, for example, the narratives. You remember that before the Honorable Norbert Mao officially crossed and became a minister, he had been attacking NUP as his core business every day. So to an innocent Ugandan, they were saying, oh, why are opposition people attacking each other? But if you lift the veil and look beneath, this was someone working for the regime, trying to discredit another political party among the forces of change. So what are we doing then? I said I don't want to just come and lament here. I'm saying that we have been very, very actively and seriously engaging with other formations, what we call the coalition of the willing. We don't care which political party you come from, because as our president has constantly said, it doesn't matter which color you're putting on, as long as you are able to advance the cause for which. But you can be putting on NUP or a beret like the one I'm putting on, but if you're not standing for the values that we are standing for, then you're not our comrade.
All right, very quickly, we saw some sort of action being taken against some leaders in Busoga region, and some people are concerned and saying this is likely to happen elsewhere.